Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is chapter 2 of me taking in very important learnings from my trip in Tunisia, and I've been trying to manage my pretty significant oil leak that I had on Bob. And as you can see, the underside of the car is now dry and just fine, no oil leaks. So today we'll be talking about classic Mini oil levels, oil leaks and oil dipsticks. So stick around. So, what was the story with that very important oil leak that I've been experiencing throughout my trip in Tunisia? This is the side, the left side, this is the dusty left side of a A-series engine crankcase, through the center of which runs the crankshaft, and hence there's a main oil seal, which you can see here, that is there to keep oil in the engine and not out. Underneath the crankcase there is a tiny little hole that usually in a lot of Minis drips oil. Now if you see oil dripping out of here, you most definitely have a leak on your main gasket seal, the oil seal. So basically oil seeps out, accumulates here, and then starts dripping all the way down and to the floor, creating a very nice sexy looking oil puddle. What I couldn't figure out was why was my oil leak so persistent, because before I left for the trip I did see the leak on my engine. I removed the flywheel, I replaced the oil seal with a brand new one, but despite that oil seal replacement, Bob started leaking oil maybe 400 or 500 kilometers down the road, and I just accepted the fact that I was going to keep on traveling with an oil leak. But that was a huge waste of resources on my side, because mind you, I could end up in an awkward place out of the middle of nowhere, having consumed all my spare oil, still leaking oil, and that would have put me in quite a difficult situation. So I had to figure out why that leak was happening. Couple of scenarios I went through was, first of all, you could have a leak if your oil seal is just a very old worn oil seal, which was not the case with mine. Both of my seals were brand new, yet both of them failed and they leaked. So the seal itself was not a problem. Then I thought if there was something, a piece of debris, something had broken in my gearbox that traveled up with the oil, scratched or cut through the oil seal, and hence I had a leak. That was not the scenario either. The other thing I had to inspect was the gear that runs through that oil seal, and this is the surface, and you can see the mark, it's shinier, where that seal runs on. If there was damage, if there was pitting, if there was anything that could damage the seal, that wasn't the case either. This is basically pretty okay. So I had to turn elsewhere, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong till I referred to the manual. This framed up document came with Bob in 1976 when the car was produced and imported in Greece from Kendavros Center, the company that was the official importer of classic Minis back then. And out of all the engine specs that are described here, ta-da, maximum oil quantity in the engine of a 20W50 oil is 4.82 liters, and that includes an oil filter change. So I figured if there was nothing wrong with my engine and there was nothing wrong with my seals, was I actually overfilling my engine with oil? Because that could explain a lot of the issues I've been having. So, since I couldn't actually figure out what was actually wrong and causing my oil leak, I couldn't find any mechanical issues anywhere. I couldn't find any damaged seals, any damaged gaskets, nothing that would basically explain such an extensive oil leak. So I had to turn to a different approach altogether. I decided I was gonna measure how much oil I was putting into my engine till the indicator on my oil dipstick reached its maximum level. That's one approach. The approach I used was to measure my oil filter separately and then see how much was left to top up till I made it to 4.82 liters of oil, just like the manual describes. And you can also find that information, though I couldn't find it on the Haynes manual. I found it in the 1976 to 79 Rover Mini manual that actually states that the total oil quantity on this engine should be 4.83 liters in that manual, 4.82 liters in my documentation. So, excluding the oil filter, which measures 275 milliliters of oil, and I've actually marked it on my valve cover so I never forget, that leaves the oil sump with 4.575 liters, well, for all practical reasons, 4.5 liters of oil, and that should read max. So, let's see how that works. What you basically need is a graduated tube and start topping up with oil 1 liter at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 4.5 liters exactly, put them in the engine, and then use my dipstick to see if that corresponds to a maximum reading. So that's 1 liter of oil. In case you're wondering, I've already taken the old oil out, replaced the gasket on my oil sump plug, and I'm topping up. That's 1 liter of oil. Let's go for a second one. Two liters of oil. Third liter. 4 liters of oil. And now I'm gonna do half a liter. Half a liter of oil, so in total now I have 4.5 liters of oil in my engine. And if everything is correct, with the oil dipstick, the reading should be max. Otherwise, things would be wrong. Okay. I'm gonna let that oil run all the way down to my sump, and then I'm gonna measure it. Now, the standard oil dipstick that this engine came with is this one, which is the standard, which is graduated down here, and it has a marking for minimum and a marking for maximum. So if all goes well, since I have not changed my oil filter, with 4.5 liters of oil, my indication should be here at max. This one is a sexy looking, pretty much a lot of us have this oil dipstick in our engines. It's a reproduction, and it states on any major Classic Mini parts that you buy one of these that it is for A+ engines only. And if I compare it to this one, the markings kinda like align, almost, but we're gonna put both to the test and see which one reads what. Because though I've looked for information on oil dipsticks for Classic Minis or A series engines, there was either very few or very vague or very conflicting information out there, and suggestions of people of adding, I don't know how to describe those quantities of oil or the methods used, to correctly determine how much oil the engine should have. The manual states 4.8 liters of oil. That's how much you should have in your engine and mine. Let's give that a first test. First, I'm going to use the original dipstick that my Mini came with. All the way down, take you out. 4.5 liters of oil, just above the minimum marking. That was my culprit for sure, because I've done this before I shot this video, and I've correctly measured how much oil I would have added into my engine had I stuck to the maximum reading. That was an extra 750 milliliters of oil. That is a lot of extra oil to have in an engine. And if I use the sexy looking oil dipstick that most of us have, here you go, you come, it is right slightly above the second marking from the bottom. So that's also at the lower end. So both of these dipsticks actually incorrectly display the proper quantity of oil your engine should have. So what I've done now is I know which marking corresponds to the proper quantity of oil in my engine. So if I'm using the new one, I need to be at the second mark from the bottom, which would be halfway between minimum and maximum. So halfway from the bottom means I have exactly 4.8 liters of oil in my engine. In the original one, I need to stick to the minimum, not the maximum, because that's too much oil in the engine, and that's exactly what's been causing not only the oil leak to happen on the main crankcase seal, but also made my oil pressure reading kind of erratic at some times. Because now that I've lowered the level of oil, my pressure reading on the pressure gauge is spot on 50 when I cruise, regardless of it being a super hot day or a cold day. My oil pressure is stable. So I've already done almost 2,000 kilometers having replaced my leaking oil seal with a lower level of oil, correctly measured to be 4.8 liters, and I haven't had a single issue. Not a single drop has leaked out of this engine, and I'm so happy that I have finally found what the culprit was. I hope you find this video interesting. If you did like it, please subscribe, please like. You help me a great deal in carrying on with my videos and with my travels. There will be another one coming pretty soon. So till then, take care of your fantastic selves, do motor on, enjoy your minis and the open road, and I'll be seeing you very soon.